and it's chapter 2. Hold it. I suppose I should stop before things start getting messy and tell you exactly who I am. My name is Lucy Carlyle, and I make my living destroying the risen spirits of the restless dead. I can throw a salt bomb 50 yards from a standing start and hold off 3 spectres with a broken rapier, as I did that one time in Berkeley Square. I'm good with crowbars, magnesium flares, and candles. I walk alone into haunted rooms. I see ghosts when I choose to look for them, and I hear their voices too. I'm just under 5 foot 6 inches tall, and I have hair the colour of a walnut coffin, and wear size 6 ectoplasm proof boots. There, now we are properly introduced. So I stood with Lockwood and George on the first floor landing of the boarding house. All of a sudden, it was very cold. All of a sudden, I could hear things. I don't suppose there's any point trying to break down the door, George said. No point at all. Lockwood's voice had that far-off, absent quality it gets when he's using a sight. Sight, listening, and touch. They're the main kinds of psychic talent. Lockwood has the sharpest eyes of all of us, and I'm the best at listening and touch. George is an all-rounder. He's mediocre at all 3. I had my finger on the light switch on the wall beside me, but I didn't flick it on. Darkness stokes the psychic senses. Fear keeps your talent keen. We listened. We looked. I don't hear anything yet, Lockwood said finally. Lucy, I'm getting voices, whispered voices. It sounded like a crowd of people, all speaking over one another with the utmost urgency, yet so faint it was impossible to understand a thing. What does your friend in the jar say? It's not my friend, I prodded the rucksack. Skull? There's ghosts up here, lots of them. So, now do you accept that you should have stabbed the old codger when you had a chance? If you'd have listened to me, you wouldn't be in this mess, would you? We're not in a mess, I snapped. And by the way, we can't just stab a suspect. I keep telling you this. We didn't even know that he was guilty then. Lockwood cleared his throat meaningfully. Sometimes I forgot that the others couldn't hear the ghosts' half of the conversation. Sorry, I said. It's just being annoying as usual. It says there's lots of ghosts. The luminous display on George's thermometer flashed briefly in the dark. Temp update, he said. It's dropped 5 degrees since the foot of the stairs. Yes, that fire door acts as a barrier. The pencil beam of Lockwood's torch speared darkness and picked out the rigid grey surface of the door. Look, it's got iron bands on it that keeps our nice little old couple safe in their living quarters on the ground floor. But anyone who rents a room up here falls victim to something lurking in the dark. He turned the torch beam wide and circled it slowly around us. We were standing just below a pokey landing, neat enough, but cheaply furnished with purple chairs and an old cream carpet. Several numbered plywood doors gleamed dully in the shadows. A few dog-eared magazines lay in a pile on an ugly bureau near where the further flight of stairs led to a second floor. It was supernaturally cold, and there was ghost fog stirring. Faint wreaths of pale green mist were rising from the carpet and winding slowly around our ankles. The torch began to flicker as if its fresh battery were failing and would soon wink out altogether. A feeling of unquantifiable dread deepened in us. I shivered. Something wicked was very close. Lockwood adjusted his gloves. His face glowed in the torchlight. His eyes shone. As always, peril suited him. All right, he said softly. Listen to me. We keep calm. We sort out whatever's up here, and then we find a way to tackle Evans. George, rig up the iron circle here. Lucy, see what else the skull has to say. I'll check out the nearest room. With that, he lifted his rapier, pushed open the door, and disappeared inside, the long coat swirling behind him. We got to work. George took out a lantern and set it on low. By its light, he busied himself with the iron chains, creating a decent circle in the centre of the carpet. I opened my rucksack and, with some difficulty, took out a large, faintly luminous glass jar. Its top was secured by a complex plastic seal, and inside it, floating in green liquid, was a leering face. I don't mean nicely leering. This was more of the kind that you get behind bars at a high security prison. It was the face of a ghost, a phantasm, or spectre, tied to the skull that rested in the jar. It was a godless and disreputable and of no known name. I glared at it. Are you going to be sensible now? The toothless lips grinned awfully. I'm always sensible. What do you want to know? What are we dealing with up here? A cluster of spirits. They're restless and unhappy and, hold on, I'm getting something else. The face contorted suddenly. Oh, that's bad. That's real bad. If I were you, Lucy, I'd find a window and jump out. So what if you break both legs in several places? It's better than staying in here. Why? What have you found? Another entity. I can't tell what it is yet, but it's strong and hungry, and the bulging eyes looked sidelong at me. No, sorry, there's a limit to what I can sense, imprisoned in this cruel jar. If you let me out, on the other hand, I snorted. That's not going to happen, as you well know. But I'm an invaluable member of this team. Says who? You spend most of the time cheering when we nearly die. The rubbery lips screwed tight in outrage. I hardly ever do that now. Things have changed between us. You know that's true. Well, it was sort of right. Things had changed between us and the skull. When we'd first begun talking to me, when it had first begun talking to me, some months before, we viewed it with suspicion, irritation, and distaste. However, as the weeks passed, we'd gotten to know it properly. We'd learned to really despise it too. George had long ago stolen the ghost jar from a rival agency, but it was only when I'd accidentally twisted a lever in the lid I'd realised the spirit trapped in there could actually speak to me. At first, it was simply hostile. Gradually, however, perhaps out of boredom or desire for companionship, it had begun offering help in supernatural matters. Sometimes this was useful, but the ghost was untrustworthy. It had no morals worth speaking of, and more vices that you would think possible for a disembodied head floating in a jar. Its nature was evil, and affected me more than the others, for I was the only one it talked to, who had to put up with a gleeful voice echoing in my mind. I tapped the glass, making the face squint in surprise. Concentrate on this powerful spirit. I want you to locate its source, find where it's hidden. With that, I stood up. George had finished the circle around me. A moment later, Lockwood emerged from the landing and joined us both inside the chains. He was calm and composed as ever. Well, that was horrible. What was? The decor in the bedroom. Lilac green, and what I can only describe as some kind of bilious off yellow. None of the colours went at all. So there was no ghost there? Ah, there is, as it happens. I fixed it in position with salt and iron, so it's safe for now. Go and look if you like. I'll replenish supplies here. George took off our torches, but didn't switch them on. We didn't need to. We were in a mean little bedroom. It had a single bed, a narrow wardrobe, and a tiny window, black and studded with rain. All this was illuminated by a horizontal orb of other light that hung above the bed, merging into the pillows and bed linen. In its centre reclined the ghost of a man in striped pyjamas. He lay on his back as if asleep, his limbs hovering slightly above the sheets. He had a small moustache and rumpled hair. His eyes were closed. His toothless mouth sagged open against a stubble-dusted chin. Cold air streamed from the apparition. Twin circles of salt and iron filings, emptied by Lockwood from the canisters on his belt, encircled the bed. Whenever the pulsing aura drew too close, the particles of salt ignited, spitting out green fire. Whatever they charge for a room in this place, George said, it's way too much. He withdrew to the landing. Lockwood had refilled the canisters and was reattaching them to his belt. You see him, did you? Yes, I said. Think that's one of those missing men? Definitely. The question is what killed him. The skull says there's a powerful spirit here. Says it's a bad one. That'll be on the prowl at midnight. Well, we can't wait till then. Let's see if we can hunt it down. We checked the next bedroom and the bedroom next to that. Both were clear. But when I opened the fourth door, I found two ghosts within. One man lay on a single bed, much like the visitor had in the other room, only curled on his side, with one arm bent beneath his head. He was older, thick-set, with sandy hair, cut very short, and dark blue pyjamas. His eyes were open, staring into nothing. Close by, so close that their auras of other light nearly touched, stood another man. He wore pyjama bottoms and a white t-shirt. He looked as if he'd just got out of bed, clothes rumpled, straggle-bearded, long black hair, a tangle. I could see the carpet showing beneath his feet. He gazed up at the ceiling as if in mortal fear. There are two death glows, Lockwood said. One's much brighter than the other. Different dates, different incidents. Something killed both these men while they were sleeping. I'm just glad neither of them slept naked, George said, particularly that hairy one. Let's pen them in. They look passive, but you never know. Got your iron, Lucy? I didn't answer him. Spectral cold was beating upon me, and when it came, echoes of emotion, of loneliness and fright and sorrow, as experienced by the lost men in those rooms. I opened myself to it. Out of the past, I heard the sound of breathing, a steady breathing of a person heavily asleep. Then came a slithering, soft, wet, flapping noise, like a landed eel. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw something on the ceiling. It beckoned to me, pale and boneless. I jerked my head around, but there was nothing there. You all right, Lucy? Lockwood and George were at my side. Over by the bed, the ghost of the bearded man stared upwards. He was looking at the same spot in the ceiling where my eyes had rested just a moment ago. I saw something up there, like a hand reaching down, only it wasn't a hand. Well, what do you think it was? I gave a shiver of disgust. I don't know. We penned in the two ghosts and checked the final bedroom on the first floor. It had no dead occupants, which made a nice change. Then we considered the final flight of stairs. Greasy filaments of ghost fog were pouring down it, cascading like water over a weir, and the beams of our torches seemed to warp, and twist as they probed through the darkness. Yep, that's where the action is, Lockwood said. Come on. We gathered what remained of our stuff. From the depths of the ghost jar, the grotesque face watched us keenly. You're not going to leave me behind, are you? I'm hoping for a ringside seat when you perish horribly. Yeah, I said. Have you located the source of all of this? Somewhere above. But you knew that already, didn't you? I slung the jar unceremoniously into my rucksack and hurried after the others. They were halfway up the stairs. Didn't much like the way Evans said he'd come back to sweep us up in the morning, George whispered as we neared the final landing. Sort of implied there wouldn't be much of us remaining. I suppose he's exaggerating. Lockwood shook his head. Not necessarily. Some spirits suck out so much energy of their victims, their bodies go all dry and papery, like empty shells. That might explain why the police couldn't find any remains. Evans has probably burned them on that fire downstairs, or folded them up and put them in a box under his bed, or hung them neatly in a wardrobe, like a collection of unusual, slightly pimply suits. I'm not making this up, that happened. Thanks, Lockwood, George said after a pause. That made me feel so much better. But what do they get out of it? I asked. Mr. and Mrs. Evans, I mean. I suppose they help themselves to the victim's money and belongings. Who knows? They're obviously quite mad. Lockwood raised his arm. We halted on the topmost steps. The landing was similar to the one below. It had 3 doors, all of which were closed. The temperature had dropped again. Ghost fog flowed like a carpet of boiling milk. The whispering of dead men rattled in my ears. We were close to the heart of the haunting. All of us moved slowly, as if great weights bore down on us. We looked carefully, but saw no apparitions. "Skull," I said. "What do you see?" A bored voice came from the rucksack. "I see great peril," it intoned. "Great peril, very near." "You mean to say you can't?" "Honestly, you're rubbish. Would notice a wraith if it strolled up and dropped its pelvis in your lap." I shook the rucksack. "You dirty old pile of bones. Where's this peril?" "Not a clue. Far too much psychic interference. Sorry." I reported this. Lockwood sighed. "All we can do is pick a door," he said. "Well, I guess there's one for each of us." "I'll go for this one." George advanced confidently on the door on the left. He flung it open with a dramatic flourish. "What a pity," he said. "Nothing." "That's so obviously a broom cupboard," I said. "Look, it's a different shape. It hasn't got a number or anything. Really, you should choose again." George shook his head. "Not a chance. Your go." I picked the door on the right. It had a sticker with a number 1 on it. Holding my rapier in front of me, I pushed it open. It was a small bedroom with a sink and a mirror. Standing in front of these, faintly luminous, was a skinny, bare-chested man. His chin was white with shaving foam. He had a cut-throat razor in his hand. As the door opened, he turned and looked at me with sightless eyes. Sudden fear poured through me. Fumbling at my belt, I located my supplies of salt and iron filings and emptied them out on the floor. They created a barrier the spirit could not cross. It hung back, circling from side to side like a caged beast, staring at me all the while. I wiped my ice-cold brow. "Well," I said, "that's mine done." Lockwood made a slight adjustment to his collar. He regarded the final door. "So, my turn now, is it?" "Yep," I said. "That's room 2, by the way, the one Evans mentioned." "Right. So, there'll probably be a ghost or 2 inside." Lockwood didn't look the happiest I'd ever seen him. He hefted his rapier in his hand, rolled his shoulders, and took a deep breath. Then he gave us his sudden, radiant grin, the one that made everything seem okay. "Well," he said, "after all, how dreadful can it really be?" He pushed open the door. The good news was that there weren't a couple of ghosts inside. No, the bad news was that we couldn't count how many. It was packed with them. They filled the room, that host of pajamaed gentlemen. Some were bright, others were much fainter. They were gaunt, unshaven, hollow-cheeked, and empty-eyed. Some looked as if they'd just been woken up from a deep sleep. Others had died in the act of dressing. They overlapped with each other in that mean, dowdy space, crammed between the wardrobe and towel rail, between the bedstead and the wash basin. Some looked at the ceiling, others drifted hauntingly, staring toward the open door. They were all victims, but that didn't make them safe. I could taste their resentment at their fate, the force of their blank hostility. Cold air lapped at us. The edges of Lockwood's coat fluttered. My hair brushed against my face. "Careful," George cried. "They're aware of us. Get a barrier down before they moved," George was about to say, but it was too late. Some ghosts are drawn to living things. Perhaps they sense our warmth and want it for themselves. These men had died lonely deaths, and the urge for warmth was strong in them. Like a tide, the host of luminous figures surged forward, and in an instant they were through the door and out onto the landing. Lockwood dropped a canister of iron that he was about to pour and swung it up his rapier. The sword was out too. We wove them in complex patterns, trying to create a solid defensive wall. Some spirits fell back, others moved deftly, left and right, just out of rapier range. I grabbed at Lockwood's arm. "They'll surround us. Downstairs, quick." He shook his head. "No, there's nothing down there, and they'll follow us, and we'll be trapped. We've got to find the cause of all of this. We've got to keep going up." "But we're at the top of the house." "Are we? What about that?" He pointed. I looked, saw a narrow wooden loft hatch high above the ceiling. "George," Lockwood said calmly, "pass me the ladder, please." "What ladder?" George was busy throwing salt bombs. It ricocheted off the walls, peppering the shades with particles of bright green fire. "Pass me the ladder, George." George waved his hands above his head in panic. "Where from? Down my trousers?" "There's one in the cupboard you opened, you twit. Quick!" "Oh, yeah, I remember." George leapt for the little door. Ghosts pressed in on us. Their whispering had become a roaring. At my side, I saw the outline of a man in a vest and jogging bottoms. He shimmered towards me. I slashed the rapier diagonally, slicing him in two. The two halves tumbled, flowed together, reformed. Beyond, Lockwood had brought lengths of chain out of his bag. He was dragging them to a rough circle in the middle of the landing. In a moment, George was back. He had the ladder, the kind that expanded on telescopic legs. He jumped into the centre of the circle, next to Lockwood and me. Without words, he extended the ladder up towards the ceiling, balancing it uh, against the rim of the loft opening just below the hatch. All around us, the landing had filled with eerie light. Figures flowed towards us, white arms reaching. Ectoplasm fizzled against the barrier of chains. Up the ladder we went, first Lockwood, then George, then me. Lockwood reached the hatch. He shoved it hard. A band of blackness opened. He expanding slowly, like the edges of a paper fan. A smattering of dust fell down. Was it me, or had the assembled ghosts below us suddenly grown quiet? Their whispering stilled. They watched us with blank eyes. Lockwood pushed again. With a single crash, the hatch fell back on its hinge. Now there was a hole, a black slot gaping like a mouth. Chill air poured down from it. This is where it stemmed from, the horror of the house. This is where we'd find the cause. We didn't hesitate. We scrambled up, and, one after another, we were swallowed by the dark. And that's the end of chapter 2. Thank you for listening.